I think the tea is ready. So, incidentally, Clint from Lazy Game Reviews has built a nearly identical setup to one that I've been using for old-school music production at home. I think this offers me a perfect opportunity to join the discussion. In order to avoid repetition, I'm going to focus on just one product for now. Of all the Japanese synthesizer manufacturers, I find Korg to be the most interesting. The company was founded in 1962, around the time when Moog was just beginning to develop their iconic modular synthesizers in the West. To this day, Korg shares many of Moog's vocal characteristics with fat, beefy sounds. While having a distinct character of its own, Korg is able to mimic many of its competitors. Korg is notorious for being imaginative rather than realistic. Their higher-end workstations and full-size rack units are comparable to Yamaha's and Roland's, but anything less substantial will not fool any experienced listener. Why do I want to talk about Korg? Because recently one unit caught my attention. Being a big fan of retrowave music and general MIDI synthesis, I was doing research on wavetables, which are small expansion boards commonly used in sound cards and synthesizers from the 90s. Early sound devices utilized what was known as FM synthesis, where a simple oscillating sound wave is shaped to produce an approximation of a real instrument. Eventually, FM synthesis gave way to PCM, or pulse-code modulation. The technique of sampling and adjusting the sound of real instruments wasn't new, but what finally brought it to the masses was the falling cost of microcontrollers and memory. Much like the amount of hard drive space and RAM available in personal computers continued to increase, so did the capabilities of designer sound equipment. Trying to outperform each other, sound card manufacturers began offering modular upgrades. Expansions existing in external synthesizers typically could not be shared between competing brands, but computer world was different. One unifying standard became available and lasted for a good decade. It was Yamaha's WaveBlaster. No, not that WaveBlaster, but the form factor developed and utilized by Creative and Yamaha. It existed as a 26-pin expansion header on the side of a sound card, which could accept a variety of circuit boards with digitized instruments. Quality of sound depended on the size of onboard memory and the bit rate of captured recordings. Variety often came at the expense of quality. While companies such as Roland focused heavily on realism, dedicating up to half of their memory chips to piano sounds, appealing to classical musicians, Korg went for quantity, putting as many as 1,000 sounds into as little as 12 megabytes of space. In addition to that, their half-rack units would typically contain half the memory of their full-sized models, with instruments being downsampled by half to keep the product small and affordable, while avoiding competition with the company's own line of professional tools. Now, the real reason I wanted to talk about Korg is the presence of something unusual in two of their sound generators. NS5R and NX5R contain an unexpected component that you won't find anywhere else as far as I'm aware. They possess an internal WaveBlaster header. The lower-end model, NS5R, and higher-end NX5R are nearly identical, with the exception of an expansion card either being pre-installed or being sold separately. NX5R comes with Yamaha DB51XG card, which, when put to use, adds sounds associated with Yamaha MU series synthesizers. How is that possible? Well, since the beginning, Korg has worked closely with Yamaha in development of their electronics. In 1987, Yamaha acquired a controlling stake in Korg and negotiated to buy them out entirely. The talks continued until 1993, when Korg decided to go the opposite way, repurchasing its shares and restoring full ownership of the firm. What I find ironic is that in 1993 an ad came out for now infamous Korg 05RW sound module, which described it as a disguise kit for other keyboards, meaning that you could use a MIDI controller from a non-Korg brand, making it sound like a Korg, which means absolutely nothing, if you think about it. All MIDI equipment does that. The funny thing is that NS5R and NX5R, which came out between 1997 and 1999, did the exact opposite, turning Korg into a Yamaha at a push of a button. Well, a few buttons actually. The sound wavetable board that I'm using is manufactured by a Belgian company called Surdaco. I will provide links to it in the video description. If you don't feel like spending hundreds of dollars hunting down rare and ancient wavetables, you may want to give their devices a try. They sound as good as top-of-the-line sound blasters and have more memory dedicated to digitized waveforms. The X series comes with a USB interface that can be used to upload custom sound files. The S model lacks that interface, but costs less and takes up significantly less space. In fact, it is the smallest wavetable expansion that has ever existed. It can be installed on a sound card, into a MIDI sound module such as NS5R, or attached through a variety of options that Serdako offers, such as joystick port adapters or external enclosures. In case you're wondering, this is how you switch to a wavetable card on an NS5R once it is installed. It is recommended that you do not have a song playing while adjusting presets, or else you may end up with hanging notes requiring a subsequent reset. This will be of interest to retro gamers who are faced with the option of either using a wavetable equipped sound card such as Sound Blaster R64 or using a wavetable daughter board. The problem that many people face has to do with the fact that their sound card may not have a wavetable header to begin with. Modern models do not contain one at all, as there is no longer a need for it. It is more economical to do PCM sampling in software, using a sound card as a digital to analog converter. Old cards which do not have a wavetable header but possess an MPU41 port commonly used for joysticks aren't without options. Serdako sells external kits which can be plugged right into that port, giving a place to insert expansions. The only downside is that the process will likely clutter up the back of your retro PC. For people who prefer using external sound modules with their retro rigs or modern computers, the option is to collect synthesizers or perhaps get one that can be customized to work with multiple wavetables. Hint hint. For a retro gamer who wants to enjoy the best out-of-the-box compatibility with games from the 80s and 90s, I'd recommend getting a Roland Sound Canvas 55 Mark II, which is able to emulate an older and popular MT32 module. That one, however, will offer nothing with respect to wavetable expandability. Having a synth box that can work with a wavetable card is quite amazing. For the best non-DOS MIDI performance, I would probably recommend Yamaha MU50 through MU100 models. But for something that combines the vocals of Yamaha, has warm, Moog-like tones, and can be morphed into any wavetable-equipped MIDI sound card, I'd recommend going with Korg, NS5R, and NX5R. The X model is a lot more rare for the reason that it contains an expansion board that is worth as much as the synthesizer itself. I'm going to leave you with some 3-instrument MIDI music that I composed on the Korg, without the expansion card. Are there any downsides to Korg? Of course there are. Korgs have a reputation for being noisy compared to other synth boxes in similar price range. The bitrate of internal samples is low, the menu organization is absolutely tortuous, and lastly, the Japanese models that you are most likely to discover will have an internal power supply fixed to either 100 or 220 volts AC. That is a big problem for North America, where the voltages may go as high as 120 volts in some regions. I put mine through a 120-200 volt step-down transformer, just to be safe. Synth boxes such as Roland MT32, SC55 or Yamaha's MU series all rely on external power breaks, which makes them easier to adapt to international voltages without endangering internal components. Yamaha always produces the most impressive looking power bricks known to man. This one I possess from a different Yamaha synth box weighs as much as my entire Korg unit. But you should know that there is no magic, and Korg's portability can only come at the expense of quality, which is expressed through a very familiar hiss. Of all the devices in my stack, Korg will output the most white noise and will result in worst recording quality if I'm to begin mixing the device against itself in a multi-track editor. It's alright as long as you can play the entire composition in one go, but anything more complex and you'll run into limitations. Good luck with your retro adventures and feel free to ask me any questions in the comment section. Don't forget to visit Serdako's web shop and Lazy Game Reviews.